Alright, hello there. Okay, let's get started. What I want to do is just show you my little art corner. And I'm like one of those artists living in some artist's flat where I sleep, where I paint. I used to have a bigger studio and I'm hoping to get one sometime. You know, I love living here, but it'd be great to have a bigger place to make art. At least to have a studio to make a bigger mess while still living here. That'd be great. See how that works out. And well, what's perfect about this situation is a lot of us don't have a studio in an industrial part of town. A lot of us are living and working in their place of residence. So I think this is perfect for you. And I know that some of the stuff that I have, which I transfer from my commercial studio to my my artist's flat, my little poet/art flat bedroom. It's I like to show you, how far you can go in renovating a corner of your room. So just take a look at what I have here. So panning from the right, going left, obviously that's a window. It's beautiful to have the light, natural light, God's light, natural light coming in. And a word about that is if you want to have an optimal setting or floor plan for painting and drawing indoors, what you want is a window from on your north wall. So you're getting a north light. So you're getting the northern exposure. And one of the worst things you can have is a window on your east or on your west, especially the worst one's on your west. So if you have a room where you have a big old window on your west wall, I would say you just cover up that wall, cover up that window, somehow, because that's just the most annoying thing for here. The second from bad is a toss-up between a window on your east wall and or a window on my wall, which is on the south wall. It can be kind of annoying, but it's not as bad as the west wall. The best wall is the north wall. Like in this classroom that I was teaching before we were quarantined, has the floor plan perfectly designed. They have a huge glass north wall, literally, and they have like these multiple drapes that you can control with a switch to close a section of the drapes all the way, partially, and it's just great. So they knew what they were doing. And so let's just get into business here. So we have a window now. What's really cool about my setup is the shutters that I have. I can just close those and open them at leisure, and so that's why it's actually pretty optimal. So as we pan to my easel, and I have a light there on purpose. I was going to discuss that too. I have a big old wooden easel, and I got that from art school. Like at ASU, I got my master's in drawing and painting at ASU, and the same year I was getting out, they were discarding a lot of old easels and replacing them with new metal ones, and so I just took this one, and this was like from an artist colleague. Her and I became friends, and I think she said, yeah, I used to paint on that one, so I said, I'm going to take it as a memento of our friendship. So I just kind of snagged that, and so I have it here. Something about that, like when you're going to art school, try to find long-lasting friendships, like people that you can call your colleagues is fine, but they're also your friends, and you can talk about art and books and music and, nature. These are the things that, I still get to do with some of the people that I went to art school with. But the number's dwindling, and it's sad. But it's important to remember that. So, like, at least I have this little memento. I'm not going to edit that. Little memento of that. It just kind of keeps my spirits up when I work. So, and then notice what else I have. You know, apart from this wooden easel, I have like pieces of wood. I have like a lot of what's called particle board. And particle chip board or particle board is just, you know, like in the wood mill they grind up the wood into a pulp, and then they compress it with some kind of binder, and you get these kinds of results. And these are great for us artists. You could paint on these things, and we can talk about that later. And also you can use them as supports. And you can see how I'm ready to do some drawing with my one drawing board and the cushion paper on top of which I'll put my support for my charcoal drawing. And you want some kind of a stool to sit down on, so I'm gonna try to bring your attention to that real time. And I might have showed you this old stool before. Right there, see that? It's an old drafting stool, and I got that from my last commercial studio. The landlord was an architect major. Then he went to school for his master's, and he said, hey, you know, this room that you're going to rent from me comes complete with this chair, and you can take the chair with you. You know, you can keep it. So again, you know, a little memento, and I cherish this little thing because it reminds me of when I was going to school at ASU, and you know, and the bonding that I made with some of the other grad students, because he was a grad student and I was a grad student at the same. We were colleagues going for our masters, and he wound up going somewhere and painting for a living, and he got this big old studio, and he was able to renovate it for people like me to go in there and rent, because he was also an engineer. So there it is. I have that, and I just still get to think about that time, and it works pretty good. So you need some kind of a stool. I recommend a stool as opposed to like a regular chair. And like those office chairs, although I do have one, I'm not going to show you it. And it's funny because a lot of classrooms, they seem to have these office chairs, and they really need to have like stools. Anyways, so we have that. Now let's take a look at the light stand. So you kind of see the bottom of it, and here's the top of it. And like I sometimes mention the stores in my area. There's a place called Tempe Camera in downtown Tempe, and they're very good for supplying things like this, light stands. And the lights that I use are not just regular incandescent lights. I get what's called a full spectrum light, and you can get those there, and you can get them at a hardware store. You can even Google light store, and you can collect these lights, and you'll have a different kind of a illumination than your common yellow orangey thing. And like what you might want to do as a student is you get your camera and kind of look at the settings, and you'll see how it has like tungsten, incandescent. Now I have like LED and, you know, fluorescent and daylight. Get familiar with these kinds of things. Lighting is really important. I tend to get into that with like color theory or painting, not so much with drawing, but hey, you know, I'll kind of mention it in passing now. So like you just take your phone or or any camera, and then switch out lights. You have different kind of lights, and then photograph your drawing under different lighting conditions. And don't tinker with any kind of a filter. Excuse me, any kind of a filter. Just collect them, and you could even hang them in your, you know, in your studio. Like say, you know, write down with Sharpie. You can just write right next to it or beneath it, like, you know, incandescent, tungsten, full spectrum. You know, just kind of know what you're dealing with. Okay, so I recommend. I'm like, well, right now I'm just showing you what I have, and we can talk about you getting that if you want. Now let's look over here. There's this huge, I didn't really measure the size of this for this demo, but take a look at that. That big wooden panel. That's huge, right? That's like the size of a closet door. And it's 8 foot tall and I don't know, like 5 feet or whatever wide. And look what I'm doing with it. And so far, I'm pretty much attaching on there all the demos that I've done for my introduction to drawing class. And that's perfect for a lot of things. You can tape, like say, a photograph of a lighthouse. You know, you're in Michigan, and you have this killer photograph of a lighthouse from somewhere, you know, and now, you know, you kind of blow it up at the print store, you know, go to Office Max and say, hey, blow this up, you know, to like, I don't know, 11 by 14 or whatever. You know, whatever, like you blow it up, you know, and then you kind of like just tape it on that wall, and then you can draw from the photograph. You see how that works? This is how, you know, good students and professional artists work. And it's I don't think it's a good idea to hold your smartphone and, you know, you're doing this, and I see it all the time. So you have like, you know, you're like an artist and you're like this, hey there, and you're like this, looking at your smartphone, you're drawing. I mean, this is good for taking photographs, and I do it a lot, probably more than what I do. I used to photograph a lot when I was an undergrad and a grad student. When I had a clunky camera, big old clunky camera in comparison to these things, those things are, you know, I'm talking about the pre-digital cameras, you know, the analog cameras, the film cameras. And I used to have that around my neck, walking around photographing everything in sight. It was fun. And then so now I get this thing and I don't do half as many photographs, so go figure. And that's another thing is, if you're an art student, you should be, you know, get a couple of cameras and photograph your little heart out. Frank Frazetta, I don't know if I'm showing my age again, but he's like the godfather of fantasy art, like for book covers. And there's like a famous Molly Hatchet cover. They took one of his paintings and he did it for that. You know, I mean, Frank Frazetta, man, he was the man. Oh, and there he is. Well, I mentioned this guy because he was a avid collector of cameras. He was obsessive with cameras. He's like hundreds of cameras. You know, in a room he just collected all these cameras. So, and the funny thing about him, he was such a brilliant artist that he didn't use any references. For all these paintings you're looking at right here, he didn't look at any references. He just did it from his head. And he banged all this out. And all that's from his head. He didn't have some ugly guy come into his studio and say, hunch over like a monster and then I'm going to paint you. He just did it all from here, from the imagination. Well, you know, since we're on a tangent, you know, another contemporary of him was Bern Hogarth, famous for his Tarzan comic strip. And then he started doing his series of instructional art books. And he's another one. This book talks about how you can draw the human figure at command from memory. Okay? So I guess what I decided to do is just show you a couple of books in my little art room here, because you also should have some art books. Well, we'll get into that some other time. Now this is really important. This part of the discussion deals with so you've done a value scale and you've done a little exercise or an assignment where you made like 8 squares, 5 to 8 squares, 3 inch by 5 inch squares, and you practice making marks with, in this case, charcoal and graphite. And then you drew the solids. You've done the cube, cone, cylinder, and sphere. And so, and you even draw from a photograph. I've had you done, well, a picture that I've drawn, and I gave you a copy of it. And if you want, you can draw from the photographs I provided, the measuring technique that I talked about. But now what? I think now it is time to talk about drawing real objects. And the thing is, I highly recommend that you start drawing real objects. Now, it doesn't mean that from now on you can never draw from the imagination, or you can never draw from a photograph, or you know, from a comic book or from a print of a painting. Absolutely not. We're talking about training the eye-hand coordination system. And when you look at a photograph, it's going to be a distortion of reality, and it is really just one dimension in a sense. You've got a 360 experience in the round when you're talking about reality. So if you have, like, for instance, a flower pot on a table, you could stand and walk around the perimeter of that thing, right? You can walk completely around 360. But what if you were to stand in front of it and just take your camera and photograph it? How many degrees of an angle do you have? You don't have like 360, you have like, I don't know, like 1, right? I mean, because you're not, I mean, if you consider it, your camera is a singular eye. You're not holding 2 cameras to the left and to the right of you and then photographing it, and then you kind of, you know, assemble the object. Now, what you are doing is, when you're looking at the object, what's really cool is you can play this game and look at a flower pot or an apple or a lamp that's in front of you, and you're like 6 feet away from it, and look at it with both eyes open. Now, cover one eye with your hand and look at it, and then cover your other eye with your hand and look at it with your other eye exposed, and you'll see how it kind of shifts. And you'll notice that there's a little bit more information to the side of the object you're looking at when you close one eye and you open up the other in respective to it. You see that what I'm saying? Try that experiment. And that gets into what's called parallax, and, you know, we can get into that some other time, but that's what's going on. You're using 2 things to look at an object, and these 2 things are like, just, I don't know, how far are your eyes apart, you know, like less than 6 inches apart or whatever. So you have that little game to play. Now, when you draw something from real life, you can move to the left, move to the right. You can stand up and go, you know, you can study your object, and then you go back to your easel and draw. And that creates this relationship between you and the object, and this thing called memory. Like, you have like short-term memory, long-term memory for drawing. We could talk about that in detail later. So, what do we draw from life is the important thing for the beginner. And I'm gonna recommend fruit. And so I'm gonna show you that, and then I'm gonna show you I'm gonna show you the area in which that I'm gonna put these things and draw right now. And you can see it's, you know, it's very, very sparse. And so there it is. It's on top of a bookshelf. And if you notice, I have this marble slab, and that's like, it kind of is a little story about me. My dad used to be a tradesman, and he was a master tradesman when it came to tiling houses and terrazzo. He went to Venezuela. He learned the trade over there, and so I always had an interest in the veins that you see in terrazzo and marble. And so this is a marble slab. I got that at some tile store, and so I like putting my stuff on that, and I sometimes incorporate that in my painting or drawing. And so that's what that is. Now I'm going to come over here and discuss the fruit. So, fruit. I left it in the bag on purpose. And I went to Michael's, and I just got this little bag of fruit. Another thing you might want to try doing is go to thrift stores, and Goodwill is the best, and look and see what they have, and you might be surprised. So we have that. So you might see a part of me, my hand or whatever. It's kind of hard for me to do this all the time. But anyways, let's continue. I just wanted to show you this is like the stage, and what you put on the stage is the actor for your little drama. And so like I have this white wall here, and it's very generic. You see this in every house. And I'm thinking that you might want to have the option to change that. And so I got a couple of options for you. So the first one can be with a roll of paper like this. And so this is, make sure it's inexpensive. This is called fadeless. Make sure it's fadeless. Yay! And this brand is made in the USA. Paycon. I think I pronounced that right. And it's acid free. Remember what acid free is? That means that it doesn't turn brittle over time, doesn't change color or anything. And so like this is good to have. I can unroll this, cut it, and then I can thumbtack it or something, attach it to the wall. That's this wall. And so I have a background. And it shifts the value everywhere, because now you have a black background. A lot of the things you're going to draw are going to be defined by this. Here's a white roll of the same kind of paper, and imagine that back here. That's one option you can have. Another one is a very common item that everyone has immediately, and it's a you have a pillow cover. See that? Pillow cover. You could take this and just tack this right on there, and you can use that for a backdrop. What I have in this bag here is a bunch of different fabrics that I got from a fabric store. And like here I went to a Joann Fabrics. Go there. And so, and these are pretty big. And the reason why is because like if I had a model and I wanted her to sit or him to sit on a chair or something like that, I can put this behind them, tack it up, and it's huge. You don't have to have it this big. I can cut a section of this and put it back here. I might not do that for this demo. I'm going to keep this intact. But, and look at this. This is a type of, this is close to being a black. It's a little like an off black cloth. I have different colors. Here's a red one. And this is good for doing pastels or paintings. Still lifes and stuff like that. And then I got others. I got another one here. I got this blue one. And I want to get an orange one and a green one. I want to get some more, collect different colors. Here is a pad of colored charcoal paper. If you take a look at this, you could set up your backdrop this way with this. And, or, these are the colors, see that? So I think it's important to really get a nice area that you use to put your objects to draw, because a lot of this class involves drawing objects like this from life. So what I have here is using an 18 by 24 inch piece of charcoal paper, and I got my setup. And so I'm going to stick with that, and I'll probably show you the roll and the drapery some other time. Like we can kind of switch them out, and I'll just say here's what we have. And I used push pins for that. And I recommend that you go to the store and you buy a box of push pins. Just have them in your space. Or, I would say, get this. I hope that you can see that. Can you see it now? Ah! Okay. Alright. Your happy capitalist gentleman. Buy my glue. You know, he's smoking his pipe. He's all sophisticated. Okay. So this is cool too. You take a little bit and you just tack it on a surface, a dry surface, and you stick it, and it works. You know, so you might want to try that if you don't want to damage your wall with little push pin punctures. Okay. Hey there. Okay, I'm going to conclude this art corner and drawing stage demo with objects that you might want to consider drawing. We've already talked about fruit. So quickly, you make the decision, do you want to use artificial fruit or real fruit? Well, first of all, nature's fruit is the best fruit. Real fruit's always better than anything man-made plastic. And there's so much detail and texture, and there's a certain degree of translucency to natural fruit and vegetables. You would think that it's just some plastic surface type effect, you know, where just like artificial fruit, it's just flat, has some pigmentation and with some weird shapes, you know, that's it, like it's, you know, when it's aging or whatever. But that's not the case at all. There's like translucency to the surface of your skin, and also to the surface of certain fruit and vegetables. And you might want to get a magnifying glass and hold it to an artificial piece of fruit and just study it. Like, get a really powerful magnifying glass, okay, and look at it. And then take the same fruit, like, so if you're looking at an apple, now put that aside and look at a real apple and magnify it, and just mentally note the difference of the texture that's happening there. So the reason why I'm going to be using artificial fruit for this class is because, you know, let's say I'm a student and, you know, it takes me a while to draw something. I don't want the thing to attract flies or get rotten and, you know, attract insects or whatever. You know, the moment that you have in your room food for a period of time, it's going to attract insects and maybe even mice, maybe even a scorpion. I don't know. Like, think about, you got to think about this stuff, you know. So, like, if you're painting your kitchen, who cares, right? You know, well, maybe, you know, maybe you should, because you don't want those critters in your kitchen. So, what am I talking about? Anyways, so also it changes. Now, what could kind of be interesting is there's a word called Vanitas, and if you look at like medieval paintings and even Renaissance paintings, they have like a lot of symbols of death. And Caravaggio is one of those Renaissance artists that was interested in painting rotting fruit. You know, he has this painting of a Bacchus, and he's holding a piece of rotten fruit. You know, and then like he also has like a still life, one of his early still lifes of fruit, and he shows how some of the fruit is rotting, and he actually has like a fly on it, and so he's showing a complex aspect of nature and life, because death and life are intertwined. Very profound statement. You know, these are things that artists should be sensitive to. Now, we're not talking about that in my class. We're just talking about learning how to draw the darn things. And so that's why with artificial fruit, you learn how to draw forms. You know, and so you might want to just do that. And anyways, so that's one of the things you might want to consider getting, because, matter of fact, the first demo is going to be drawing one of these fruits for drawing real objects. The other thing I want to mention is getting a couple of jars. Like, this is really interesting, because this winds up being a plastic jar. I saw from a distance at Michael's. I grabbed it, and I almost was going to put it back. But I think that it still works. It almost looks like a glass jar. Now, why would I get this? Well, you could put stuff in this, like a giant insect, you know. And some of us like, oh, don't kill the poor critter. Well, let's say you found something that was dead, a big old beetle. I don't know if a big old. Can you see that? A big old beetle. You could drop it in there and just draw that. You could drop crumpled leaves. You know, you could put anything in this, and you can draw it. Uh, which brings me to the next thing. I have a bag of seashells. Actually, this reminds me of one of the drawing assignments that I should probably throw at you. Is you take this and you tack this on the wall and you draw this bag, you know, and the stuff that's in the bag. So now notice all the details, all these different shells, different kind of textures, and then you have like the bag, and you see like the light reflected on the surface of the bag, and you can see through the bag and draw all that. It's a texture project. Well, you could take some of these seashells and drop them in this jar, and you can draw that. And the idea would be to zoom in. You zoom in, like, you know, like that. Or you can pull out too. See, imagine, I don't know how this looks like to the viewer. See all that? That's pretty neat, right? Which brings me to the next item. That's a light stand, and I got that at a flea market. And where did I get this? I think it was somewhere in Mesa, and they had all sorts of interesting things. Okay, so if you notice here, look at the inside of this. It's seashells, and so this is something that we should draw. At the same store, I found this item. And I think it was part of it was a prop for a movie set. And they had to make this. It's all made of plastic, but take a look at what it is. Like something you would see in you know, like Captain Nemo's ship or something. You know, it's pretty cool, right? Look at the details of that. So we have that. This is kind of a sentimental value. A close friend of mine got married, and then they gave us all this little kind of memento, something from the Philippines. And so I didn't take it out of the bag. But I can take this out of the bag, and you can draw. You can actually draw this, and you can be dealing with like perspective angles, like converging lines and stuff like that. So little wooden objects like toy dollhouses, or like imagine another object made of wood like this, kind of primitive looking, you know, simple, but that's great because you have a lot of angles. So you can teach you how to draw things with angles, and you start learning about how perspective works. That's pretty neat, right? It's a styrofoam male head, and he's a mannequin. Sometimes you go to the store, and you can go to like a, you know, I don't know, any store that sells hats and, you know, clothes and stuff, and, you know, hey, do you have any throwaway mannequins? I bought these somewhere, and I think at Michael's they had these. So he's just made of styrofoam. He has enough detail. I mean, we should draw that. That's something to draw in charcoal, right? There's a lot. So as an artist, you might want to collect things, and you can do is you can store them in your garage somewhere, and the stuff that might get damaged, you just keep them in your art space. And then what happens is you can have fun with it. Another thing to have are maybe some hats, because they're perfect for this part of the country. You know, the heat, you know, the sun, you know, this is great for that, obviously, and also you can draw, you know, so you start getting interested in different texture. You see the texture of the hat. See that? You can do that. And also, if you have some friends, you know, you got some homies. This is an artist in Mesa. His name is goes by the name Edis, and there it is. You know, he drew up a hat, and I mean that could wind up in a painting. You know, sometimes something eccentric like this could serve for something that you might want to paint and draw. And the thing is, you go, well, why not just get a photograph? You know, you can't control a photograph, people. You can't go and, you know, I could do like a science fiction thing, you know, and like put them in outer space. Sounds familiar, right? You know, a little bit of a 2001 Space Odyssey action going for you. But you could, you know, you can take, you know, references like this, and you can pose them, you know, and you can put the light on them and stuff like that. So take a look at that. See the lighting? How different it is when you illuminate something that you might want to draw. So I'll keep the light on. We'll look at the next thing. We're just about done. I think we have one more thing. Oh, I might show you another object with the light on it. You will need to get a couple of these babies. Evos plebos requiem, hallelujah, hallelujah. All right, that ends my singing career. So this is really a pretty much like basic sculpture of a beautiful subject like an angel, but you know, it's just plaster, and there you go. Somebody made that and they started selling them en masse, and like unfortunately now some of this can run to be like $100. When I was in art school, I got this like for like $30. You know, some guy had a table and he had a truck, you know. I was driving down the street and I saw this guy with his truck and a table and he had all these things for sale. I pulled over and I said, I want to buy this, 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 and this. And so I still have what I bought. And this is indispensable for somebody who wants to be a serious artist in the Western tradition of drawing representationally, okay? And if you want to be an art professor or an art teacher, you got to have a couple of these sitting around. And unfortunately, they get damaged. Like I had a beautiful one of Jesus. It's totally damaged. I should show you what it looks like. It's totally decimated. Then I had that sculpture of the head that I made, and then that got all damaged. You know, I did it in plastilina. I wanted to do something with that, you know, make it into a mold and cast it, but couldn't do it in time. I could repair that thing if I wanted to, so maybe there's still a chance. Okay, so these are things that, you know, might inspire you to collect, you know, what you might find. So the question is, what are you going to find to draw? And you know, since you're taking my class, I'll guide you and say, get this, try this, try that. So I wanted to show you this last thing. You already saw it, but now with the light. See how that looks with light on it? Totally different, right? So this is important. Watch this. Yeah, I got my back. That looks okay, right? But it's kind of dull, right? Now you got what's called a high contrast. Okay, this will wrap up today's discussion on the preparation for drawing real objects and still lifes.